In 1950, a war broke out on the Korean peninsula that would kill millions, involve several world powers, and end without a clear resolution. It was not a war that people remember as often as World War II or the Vietnam War, but its effects are still felt today. The story begins at the end of World War II in 1945. Korea had been under Japanese occupation for 35 years. When Japan surrendered, the Allied powers agreed to divide Korea into two zones. Soviet troops occupied the north, while American troops occupied the south. The dividing line was the 38th parallel, roughly halfway up the peninsula. In 1948, two separate governments were formed. In the north, the Soviets helped install Kim Il-sung, a communist leader. In the south, Syngman Rhee took power with support from the United States. Both governments claimed to be the legitimate rulers of all Korea. Tensions between the two sides grew quickly. On the 25th of June, 1950, North Korean troops crossed the 38th parallel and invaded South Korea. The attack was sudden and overwhelming. Within days, Seoul had fallen, and North Korean forces continued pushing southward. It looked like they might take the entire peninsula. The United States responded almost immediately. Under the flag of the United Nations, a coalition of 16 countries sent military support, led by American forces. The goal was to push the North Koreans back and protect South Korea's independence. By September 1950, UN forces were trapped in a small pocket around the port city of Busan. But then came a turning point. General Douglas MacArthur launched an amphibious landing at Incheon, behind enemy lines. The operation was successful. UN forces recaptured Seoul and began moving north. They crossed the 38th parallel and continued into North Korea, hoping to reunify the country under South Korean control. As they approached the Yalu River, which forms the border with China, the Chinese government warned that it would not tolerate foreign troops so close to its territory. Those warnings were ignored. In late October 1950, China entered the war. Hundreds of thousands of Chinese soldiers crossed into North Korea and launched a surprise attack. The tide of the war shifted once again. UN forces were driven back. Seoul fell for the second time. The war continued through the bitter winter of 1950 to 1951. Conditions were harsh. Fighting was intense. Villages were destroyed, civilians suffered, and both sides took heavy casualties. Eventually, the front lines settled near the original dividing line, the 38th parallel. By mid-1951, the war had become a stalemate. Both sides dug in, and battles were fought over small hills and ridges that changed hands again and again. The war had become one of attrition. Meanwhile, peace talks began, but progress was slow. Disagreements over prisoner exchanges and the future of Korea dragged negotiations out for over 2 years. During this time, the human cost of the war kept rising. The United States debated how far it should go. General MacArthur even suggested using nuclear weapons, but President Harry Truman removed him from command in April 1951. The risk of global war was too high. On the 27th of July, 1953, an armistice was signed. The fighting stopped, but no peace treaty was ever agreed upon. Korea remained divided, and technically, North and South Korea are still at war today. The Korean War caused immense destruction. Around 5 million people died, including over 2 million civilians. The United States lost around 36,000 soldiers. China lost hundreds of thousands. North and South Korea suffered the most, with cities flattened and families split apart. The Korean Demilitarized Zone, or DMZ, was established as a buffer between the two sides. It is 250 kilometers long and 4 kilometers wide. Despite its name, it is one of the most heavily guarded borders in the world. In the years that followed, North Korea became one of the most isolated and militarized countries on Earth, ruled by the Kim family for 3 generations. South Korea developed into a democracy and one of the world's leading economies. The Korean War is often called the Forgotten War in the West, especially in the United States, where it was overshadowed by World War II and later by the Vietnam War. But in Korea, it was a national tragedy that shaped the country's future. Even today, the war casts a long shadow. North Korea remains a nuclear threat. Families remain divided. The armistice has held, but without a peace treaty, the possibility of renewed conflict always exists. The Korean War was not just a conflict between 2 Koreas. It was one of the first major confrontations of the Cold War. It set the pattern for future proxy wars where the United States and the Soviet Union would support opposite sides in regional conflicts. It also changed how wars were fought. The use of jet aircraft, helicopters, and large-scale troop movements became standard. It was the first war that involved the United Nations in military action. It was also one of the first wars to be widely covered by television and news photography. But perhaps the most lasting impact is the continued division of the Korean Peninsula. For over 70 years, 2 countries have lived side by side, one democratic and open, the other secretive and authoritarian, both claiming to be the true Korea. The Korean War never officially ended. It is a war without closure, a reminder of how easily conflict can escalate, and how difficult peace can be to achieve. Hope you enjoyed the video. What do you think about the North and South Korea conflict? Let's talk in the comments.